So today we're going to talk about the sum and the product of the roots of a quadratic equation with a little bit of band in the background, practicing for Syracuse. Well, there's some formulas to find the sum and the product of the roots of a quadratic equation. And when we know these formulas, we can work backwards. And if we know what the sum and the product of the roots are, then we can write an equation that those sum and products fit into. And there's not just one single equation. There are a number of different equations, but usually we'll just write the easiest one. So the formula, there's a formula for the sum of the roots. The sum of the roots, sometimes we write them as the root 1 plus the root 2. That means sum, add them up. And so the sum of the roots is equal to negative b over a. X equals negative b all over a. That's the sum of the roots. And the product of the roots has its own formula, and that's R1 times R2. So if you know the two roots, multiply them together, and those roots are, you can calculate that, the product by C over A. So if you have an equation like 2x squared plus 3x minus 4, and I ask you to find the sum is negative b. Well, A is 2, B is 3, C is negative 4. So if I want you to find the sum of those roots, then the sum is negative b, which is negative 3, over a, which is 2. And the product is c over a, which is negative 4 over 2, which just is equal to negative 2. So that's the product. So now what we're going to do is we're going to work backwards. So if we know that the sum of the roots is 10 and the product of the roots is 9, then what is one possible equation with these roots? Well, if we know that the sum is equal to 10, or sum is 10, then we know that negative b over a is equal to 10, and the product, which is c over a, that's equal to 9. And so let's make it simple. Let's set a equal to 1. So negative b over a is negative b over 1. So if negative b equals 10, then b equals negative 10. And if c over a is 9 and a is 1, c over 1 is 9, so that just means c must be equal to 9. So one possible equation, if a is 1, is ax squared plus bx, ax squared plus bx plus c equals 0. So there's one quadratic equation that will fit. Whoops, sorry about that. All right. So what we know is if we know the sum, we can just make the opposite of the sum and put it there, and we know the product, we can just put the product there and just set it up into this quadratic equation like that. Make sure it's equal 0. All right, so now we're going to just find the sum and the product. The sum and the product. The sum is equal to negative b over a, negative 9. A is 1, b is negative 9, c is 2. So the sum is negative b over a, 9. Product is c over a, 2 over 1, 2. This a is 2, b is 5, c is negative 3. So negative b over a is the sum, and the product is c, which is negative 3, negative 3 over a, which is 2. That's the product. And then the last one, you have to subtract 7 first. 4x squared minus 5x minus 7 equals 0. So a is 4, b is negative 5, c is negative 7. So the sum is negative b over a, which is positive 5 over 4. And the product is c over a, which is negative 7 over 4. And then on the last page of our notes here, what we're going to be doing is we're given the sum, given the product. Let's write an equation that satisfies these roots. Well, let's make it easy. All you have to do is start out with x squared, take the opposite of the sum, the opposite of 6 is negative 6, put it in front of an x, plus the product, and that's equal to 0. This one, x squared, the opposite of negative 11 is positive 11, x, and the product is 0, so you can put plus 0 if you want, but you don't have to. You can just set it equal to 0. The next one, x squared, well, this is 0x, which you don't even write. You don't have to. 0x is just 0, so you will omit that term. The product is negative 12 minus 12 equals 0. So those are pretty, if you know the sum and product. All right, so let's review again. The sum of the roots is negative b over a. The product of the roots is c over a. And now on your own, after I shut the video off and find the sum and put it here, the product and put it here, and write down what a, b, and c. Like this first one, a is negative 2. There's no b, there's no x term, so b is 0 and c is 1. So use these formulas and find out what the sum and product are. This one you're going to have to subtract 3x from each side. So 9x squared minus 3x equals 0. So a is 9, b is negative 3, and c is 0. So find the sum and product and put them here. Now if the roots are 10 and negative 9, you can get the sum by adding them together. 10 plus negative 9 is 1, and the product, 10 times negative 9 is negative 90. So when you know the sum and the product, it's just like these problems up here, you're going to be able to write an equation. Okay, if one of the roots is 7i, you know the other root has to be the conjugate, which is negative 7i. So the other root being negative 7i, when you add them together, 7i plus negative 7i, you'll write that down as the sum. The product is 7i times negative 7i. So you're going to write what the product is, and then you're going to fill in just like you did up here for writing the equation with those roots. Well, if one root is the square root of 6, the other root's got to be negative square root of 6, right? So then you figure out what the sum is. Square root of 6 plus negative square root of 6, 0. Okay, and the product, negative square root of 6 times positive square root of 6. That would just be negative 6. All right. If one root is negative 4 plus the square root of 10, the other root must be negative 4, the conjugate, plus the square root of 10. So get the sum, get the product, and fill in, like you did here, the opposite of the sum and then the product. In this one, if one root is 7 minus 2i, what is the other root? It must be 7 plus 2i, the conjugate of that. So you have to calculate the sum, add them together. You have to calculate the product, multiply them, and then when you get the sum and the product, then you're going to put them in to this x squared minus the sum of the roots times x plus the product equals 0. Okay? The next one, you have to figure out what b is. If you know one root is 3 and you know a is 1 in this problem, b you have no idea. C is negative 12. So if you know a and c, then you know the product, which is c over a. C over a is negative 12 over 1, which is negative 12. Well, if the product of the roots is negative 12, if one root is 3, 3 times what is equal to negative 12? Well, then you'll get the other root. And then once you get the other root, then you know what the sum is, and then the opposite of the sum will go there. In this one, you know a is 1, you know b is 6. C you have no idea. But if you know b and a, you know that the sum of the roots, which is negative b over a, is negative 6 over 1. If one root is 2, and if you add them together, negative 2 plus what is equal to negative 6, you'll find the other root. And then when you get the other root, the product, negative 2 times that other root, will be the product, and that will go in the place of c. And then the last one, same problem, but this time a is 1, b is negative 1, c you have no idea. But if you know a and b, you know the sum of the roots is equal to negative b over a, which is negative 1 over 1. So if one root is 4, and the sum of the two roots is 1, you say, well, negative 4 plus what is equal to 1? Add 4 to both sides, and you should see that the other root is 5. And so when you get the other root as 5, you can get the product by multiplying negative 4 times 5 and then putting the product in for c. So there are a few steps going on here with this, but I'd like you to try these on your own, and hopefully we'll get a chance to do these in class when I see you again. Have a good night, and happy math.